So we start chapter 26. Now Rukmani and her husband Nadan are at the collector's house. And we know why they have come to the collector's house. They were told that their son Murugan works at the collector's house. And he has gone for higher wages, they were told. So after leaving Dr. Birla's house, they come to the collector's house. Let's go through this and look at the first para. And we find the collector's house on Chamundi Hill. And it was simple enough to find. And its location is mentioned. The hill itself could be seen for miles around. And everyone had heard of the collector and knew where he lived. So you can mark this collector. And the collector was the highest civil administrative officer who is in charge of collections of revenues and administration of a certain district. And also the collector had magisterial powers. And also under the British Raj, his post is also known as district magistrate. And it is a legacy of the British imperialism or British Raj. And that post was established in 1772. Right. So they come to the collector's house. And everyone had heard of the collector and knew where he lived. So from these words too, we gather that he is an important person. He is an important person and everybody knew about where the collector lives. And they found that this house was a very fine one, taller than the young casuarina trees that grew near it. And its color is there brilliantly white and newly painted around the house and grounds, which stretched away on either side of the hill, ran a low compound wall. A number of peons were standing about, turbaned and belted, much more imposing than the tannery chowkidas had been. And then there are a number of peons, like guards, standing about, and then they were in uniform, wearing turbans, and then belted, and they were more imposing than tannery guards, chowkidas. That's an Indian term, meaning watchers or guards. So in short, we gather that this is a rich and very impressive household. So next we find how one of the peons came up to them and he mistook them to be beggars. No beggars are allowed here. So they look like beggars. They are very poor. So they were mistaken for beggars. We are not beggars. We have come for our son Murugan, who works here. And with that words, the man's manner changed. And Rukmani thought that he looked at them almost sympathetically. and was about to say something but changed his mind. Instead, swinging the heavy gate open for us and indicating that we should follow him. He didn't say anything about Murugan, but he promised them that he would take them to his wife. The servants go downs, go downs, another Indian term meaning servants' quarters at the back of the house. And then, Rukmani started to visualize meeting Murugan's wife for the first time. And we know that she could not attend Murugan's wedding. It was very far away. It took place in the city with the participation of the girl's parents. But since it was very far and they could not raise the fare for their travel, they could not come to the wedding. Now she is dreaming about meeting this girl for the first time. My son who had gone so long. And then she is excited, and Nadan beside me quickened his step. His excitement was a part of me too. And this feeling of excitement is shared by husband and wife, father and mother. Both are excited. And that man said, pointing to a certain room, this is Ammu's go down. So you can underline her name, Ammu. Make yourselves known to her, I cannot wait. And after that, he went away. The go down he had pointed to was much the same as the one we had left. A small square room set in a row, only here the row was much longer. There were some 10 or 12 go downs. So we gather that the owner of the house is an important person, a rich person, one of the highest administrative officers in the country. So he had about 10 or 12 servants, more than that perhaps. The door stood open. From within came the sound of a baby's fretful crying. Nadan said in a cracked voice, let us go in. So they mustered their courage to go in. But we could not. Although the door stood open, the sunshyness had set a stranglehold upon us, and the sense of intrusion was strong. And in the end, we stood by the open doorway and called. Right, so they were mustering of courage to go inside this, go down, but waited outside. And so they called, staying outside, they called. And as a response to that summoning, a girl came out, a thin girl with untidy hair came out. The baby we had heard crying at her hip, a small boy clinging to her sari, stood staring at us with a slight frown. Who is it? What do you want? No smile, no welcome. Perhaps she thinks we are beggars. Perhaps, this came as a surprise because we know that they were treated well at Dr. Birla's house. And of course, we read about hospitality of Dasa's wife, Birla's servant's wife. But in contrast to Das's wife, Murugan's wife is not a friendly one. No smile, no welcome. Perhaps she thinks we are beggars. And we find, how Rukmani was trying to excuse her behavior. Perhaps she thinks we are beggars, I thought. No wonder since we look it, and once more the humiliation of having nothing, not even a cooking pot, smote at me. And then Rukmani is humiliated because we know what happened to them and their possessions were lost. And after that, they lost their money too. Now they come to their son as beggars, owning nothing. So it hurt her a lot. It hurt her pride a lot. We are Murugan's parents, Nadan said gently. You must be his wife. And to that, the girl assented, nodded. Then, recollecting herself, she drew aside so that we could enter. Then she seemed to remember her manners. So she drew aside, letting the strangers or her husband's parents come inside, came after us and stood biting her lip as if uncertain what to say. And we find continuously how Rukmani tried to interpret her behavior, biting her lip. Right, this is what she thought or interpreted her action as if uncertain what to say. These must be our grandchildren, I said, trying not to notice her attitude. And Rukmani perhaps realized that this is somewhat strange and they are not really welcome there. She is not that friendly and welcoming. And she tried not to notice her attitude. I have long wanted to see them, no doubt, the girl said, her lips twisting a little. No doubt you want to see your son too. He is not here. Not here, Nathan repeated. I was told he was here. When is he coming back? I wish I knew, she replied. I do not think he will ever come back. So now this is like a riddle. And his wife says that she does not know whether he will ever come back. What do you mean? Are you not his wife? What makes you say he will never return? He left me, she replied bitterly. He has been gone nearly 2 years. Okay, right. Can you underline this? So there we find the climax of quest for Murugan. So search for Murugan ends here. And they learn that Murugan is not there, not with his family, and he has abandoned his own family, own wife and own children. So he is like a person who betrayed, a betrayer. He has been gone nearly 2 years, a deserter, a betrayer. Okay, so you can call this as a climax of search for Murugan. And we know second part of the novel is about going to coming to the city in search of Murugan. And of course, we read it was not an easy task for these villagers who don't have experience of the city. So they were being ridiculed by others, laughed at by others, and then they had to face misfortunes. And ultimately, they came to the place Murugan is supposed to stay, only to find that he had left his own family 2 years ago. Okay, right. So this is important. You have to mark this. We had come a long way to meet bad news. Now it seemed there was neither going back nor going forward. Okay, can you underline? There was neither going back nor going forward. Now they are in a deadlock. You can even call this a stalemate situation. Stalemate situation or checkmate situation. That is, there is no progress. Right? They can't go back and they can't go forward. So they are trapped in a certain situation. So their desperation is there. Both of them are distraught, heartbroken, disappointed, frustrated, right? Because now they are trapped in a situation where they cannot go forward or backward. What we had saved had been taken from us. There was nothing more, nothing left to sell, neither youth nor strength left to barter. Right. So Rukmani mentally sums up the situation, their predicament. They have nothing. Right. Everything was taken away from them. First their land, and after that after coming to the city, their possessions and their money. Now there was nothing more. Now they have only what they wore. And also there is nothing left to sell. And there are certain things you can sell, neither youth. And you can sell your youth, that is, as long as you are strong enough, you can find work. And then that service, work can be converted into money. No strength, no strength to work. Right, so youth is not there and strength is not there. Right now they are in a real deadlock. You can write there summing up the situation. And after that, she took stock of the room. So it is a single room house. And then there are certain issues, repeated issues we find in the novel. They are, some of them are poverty, starvation, suffering. Those can be found through the entire novel, at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. And in the village and in the city as well. I looked about the room in which my son's wife lived, and I knew that at any rate we could not stay here. Such resources as she had were not enough even for herself. They would certainly not stretch to cover our needs. Except for a small bowl full of rice, there seemed to be no other food in the place. The little boy was thin and hollow cheeked. His mother looked worn and haggard and was obviously hardly able to feed the baby, who kept whimpering fitfully. The cry of hunger, which is different from the other cries of infants. And she is familiar with this cry of hunger, because she suffered. Rukmani, Rukmani was familiar with the cry of hunger of babies. So the issues she experienced in the village are in the city too, like poverty, poverty of these people, and then hunger, starvation, suffering. Right? You can mention these issues like starvation, suffering, poverty. Is there no way of finding out where he has gone? Nathan said at last, perhaps if we run right. And that is impossible because we know that even to find Murugan, they, they were like going here and there. It was like a wild goose chase. And then luckily they managed to find the place. Still, he was speaking about perhaps if we tried. I have tried, Ammu said brusquely. Do you think I haven't? He has left the city. Nobody knows where he has gone. So he seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Nobody knows where he has gone. There was about her faint air of hostility, as if in some way she held us responsible for his defection. And Rukmani actually felt certain things, hostility, frustration, and as if she was holding them responsible for Murugan's fault. As indeed we are, I thought sadly. We gave him life, we should have taught him better. And looking back, it was difficult to see how or where the mistake had been made. We had been there about an hour, perhaps less, in Amuros. I must go to my work. It's late already. I shall be back at midday to feed the children. Stay till then. Do you go far? No, only to the house. I sweep and clean. It must be hard work, I said. You do not look very strong, and the house is a large one. She shrugged, as if to convey that there was nothing she could do, that she couldn't help it. I'm not the only one. Besides, one must live. It is not everywhere one can earn 15 rupees a month and have a go down to live in free. Now, once more we see the suffering of poor people and how helpless they are. Unemployment, and that could have been very high in the city, and even in the village we know that there was a tight competition to find jobs. So she gets 15 rupees a month and also quarters, a place to live. The baby was still astride her hip. Now she arranged a few rags in a corner of the room and laid him down. Instantly he began to wail, let me take him. I said, he may quieten down. As you wish. She said indifferently, picking him up and handing him to me. Of course, you realize he has nothing to do with you. You can underline this. I mean, he is not your grandchild, of course. Right, so there was nothing Rukmani could say. When it is revealed, she revealed that openly without hiding anything, that the younger one is not Murugan's child, therefore not their grandchild. So the youngest child is not related to Rukmani and Nadan. Of course, one must live, she repeated, defiant, challenging, sensing reproach where none could be. Can you mark this? Highlight this. One must live. And now she's defiant, as if she's challenging, defiant attitude, sensing reproach. Reproach is blame, where none could be. Right? So Rukmani is not prepared to blame her for misbehaving, for infidelity. So it is very true. One must live, because she realized that one must live, because in a survival gets a top priority. To survive, you have to do something. One must live. So we find how females are exploited, and then Ammu is alone, perhaps without like much money. And of course, she gets some money like 15 rupees per month. That money may not be enough, because we can see the poverty uh, in the house, right? And Rukmani noticed that there was only a small amount of rice and there was no other food in the house, and children were emaciated and they were crying. So she realized that one must live. So at midday, as she had said, she came back. She had told us to wait, yet now her attitude said very clearly, "You should not have taken me at my word. What I said was said in duty and for no other reason." And then Rukmani once again interpreted her attitude towards them. And she thought that through her attitude, through her behavior towards him, that she seemed to convey that you should not have taken me seriously even though I asked you to wait, and it was out of duty that I can't keep you here. And Rukmani understood a behavior in that way. So she was in a moody silence, and she never wanted to be friendly towards them, perhaps thinking that that will be an encouragement for them to stay. And then she started preparing the meal, doing the things like lighting the fire, fetching water, boiling the rice, and with the baby astride her hip. And then he was whimpering, crying in a complaining note, but unheeded. She didn't pay attention to his crying. She did not speak until we had eaten, and she didn't make friendly conversation. Then she looked up. After they had taken their meal, she looked up. "Where will you go? Can you return to the village?" "And when?" said her hostile, questioning eyes. "I cannot keep you here indefinitely. The sooner you go, the better." Right. Once again, Rukmani seems to be reading Ammu. Even though she didn't use these words, she interpreted the attitude correctly. And through her attitude, Rukmani thought that she was conveying that she was unable to keep them here. "We must return to our village," Nadan agreed. "There is nothing for us here. We came only because of our son, you understand." right? Northern grade or said that they should return to their village. There is nothing for us here. She nodded, yes, he has let us all down. So Murugan has let all of them down because they pinned their hopes on Murugan and Murugan disappointed all of them. And Rukmani and Nadan came thinking that their son will look after them in their old age. But then he had let them down. He had left his own family. Maybe there were reasons, I said. Whatever claim this woman had on him, still he was my son. I could not let her heap all the blame on him. Her face darkened, anger bloated her lips and lit fires behind her black brooding eyes. And then Rukmani wanted to excuse the behavior of her son. Right, she was on the defensive when Ammu accused him of letting all of them down, deserting her and deserting his children. And then Rukmani played it safe, saying maybe there were reasons. And then this one is a stranger. But Murugan was her son. And there we find her motherly feelings towards her son took hold of her. I could not let her heap all the blame on him. And then to that, her face, she responded to that. Anger bloated her lips, and she was angry, and the fires are flashing behind her black brooding eyes. They were the usual ones. Can you underline? They were the usual ones. Women and gambling. Perhaps he has taken up the habits of townspeople, and we know there are a lot of voices in the city. And when a tannery came to the village, and workers to work in the tannery to enter the village, so there's a great influx of people, different people from different parts of the country. So many of them were city people. So they came and settled down in the village. And with them, a lot of vices came. A lot of, uh, bad things, bad habits, immoral things entered the village. And two are mentioned here: women, that is prostitution, and gambling. We looked at each other. Right. So we find how she responded to Rukmani's there were reasons. So no doubt she is provoked, she is angry. We looked at each other, trembling on the brink of a quarrel. Bitterness part in the threads of forbearance one by one. The forbearance is patience, one by one. But while a few still held, suddenly the outward semblance fell away. I saw only that she was a very young girl, frail beyond most, deserted by her husband and doing her best to feed herself and her children. Okay, can you mark this place, this paragraph? So this is a fine illustration of Rukmani's self-control, and this manifests her maturity as well. And now we can look back at a few similar or parallel situations like Rukmani's attacking Kunti at night when she was once again when she was provoked, and Kunti accused her of infidelity, that is going here and there during the night when the husband was not at home. She was insinuating, and then Rukmani lost her control, lost her self control. And here too is a situation where Rukmani almost lost her self control. But then suddenly it dawned upon her that this girl was a very young one, and frail means very weak, and then she was bent double by the weight of the family and burden of feeding her children and then feeding herself also. Now, that could have been too much for this young girl to bear. And then she understood reality, right? That is her maturity, which Rukmani did not display earlier, right? And then she lost her temper in about two or three places in the novel. One is the encounter with Kunti, and then later we find how she attacked her own daughter, mistaking her to be Kunti, coming at night to steal some rice. But now we find a more matured person, a more self-controlled person. Right. So she understood reality. I'm sorry, I said jerkily. And the Rukmani, of course, she is the adult one. So she should not apologize to the younger one. And the younger one is ready to start a quarrel. But it's Rukmani, the adult, who apologized to the younger one. I'm sorry. And you can see how level headed Rukmani is. I must have been out of my senses. Right. And then, uh, she mentioned the reason for her almost losing her self control. She nodded very slightly, accepting my explanation, the blaze dying out behind her face. Right, blaze of anger. Now it is quieting down. It is better that we should go now, said Nathan, rising. Nathan decided that it's high time they left. While it is still light, we are not yet used to this city. Darkness does not help. And then Nathan focused their attention on something more practical, because now it's evening, right? And still there is some light, so we can find our way. Where will you go? Ambu repeated her question. Her voice had taken on anxiety behind the relief which she could not hide. And on one hand, she was relieved because she could not keep them, she could not feed another two. I sensed her troubled, uneasy mind moving from doubt to doubt. No words, the meaning clearer than if there had been. These people are old. They are mine through my husband. I have a duty to them. But what of myself and my children? Are we not poor enough, ragged enough, without two more coming to share our resources? So poverty can make a person very selfish. And very poor people, they jealously guard their possessions, and they don't want to donate anything. They don't want to share things. Most of them, we can't say all of them are like that, but most of them are forced to be selfish by circumstances. Yet what of them? They have nothing. The shadows of her thought, dull and heavy, moved across her pale thin face. Right. So once again, Rukmani is penetrating into the mind of her daughter-in-law, Ammu, meaning clearer. And she thought that these are the thoughts which came into her mind, like these people are old people, and I may have to look after them, and I'm related to them through marriage, so I'm duty bound to support them. But how about myself, and how about uh, feeding my children? Right. And then poverty sometimes makes an individual lose humanity, good human qualities. We will return to our son and daughter, Nathan said, not replying directly, but what of you, my child? So Nathan is really such a sweet-natured person. He even used the word my child. It is we rather than you who should ask. We have had our day. You are still young, the mother of children who cannot help you for many years yet. You know, Nathan is a very considerate person, a compassionate person. And he puts himself in Ammu's shoes and then evaluates the situation. How about you? Right, and you have children, and they can't help you for many more years yet to come. She stared at him as if unused to consideration, credulous, almost suspicious, hardly credulous, almost suspicious. I can look after myself and my children, she said, slightly emphasizing the myself and my children, so that we might understand, but not my in laws as well. I have managed for a long time now. And then Ammu doesn't seem to be used to consideration and care. And now she's suspicious of everyone, and not really believing, hardly credulous, and almost suspicious. And she may have thought that that Nathan may have something in his mind, like flattering her and then staying with right. So she didn't want to give them any hope that they would be able to stay with her. You know, she emphasized myself, my children, to convey that the others, outsiders, are left out. I have managed for a long time now. So she is not sensitive to sympathy, and perhaps she is suspicious. There is no touching this girl, I thought. Misfortune has hardened her, which is just as well. We will take many a knock yet. There seemed nothing more to say, nothing left to keep us. So after what happened to the girl, you know, she is not trusting, and she doesn't care for others. She only cares for herself and her children. So Rukmani thought that that is due to misfortune as well. It has hardened her. It has made her a tough person. There seemed nothing more to say, nothing left to keep us. Ammu had begun to fidget, moving restlessly where she sat, pulling nervously at her fingers until the joints cracked. I nudged Nadan, who was sunk in thought. So this was a moment of silence, embarrassing silence, stony silence. And nobody spoke for a while. And it was Nadan who finally started to speak. So he broke silence first. We must go. Yes, yes, he said. Starting. Rukmani said, we must go. Yes, yes, he said, starting. It is getting late. We looked again at our grandchild, who was part of ourselves, and at the poor little waif who lay quietly now on the rug heap, and we said farewell. Ammu came to the doorway with us. Now that we were actually leaving, her manner became more cordial. Right, her manner became more friendly because now she realized that they are going for good, not to return. The stiff unfriendliness she had displayed had gone with the fear that we might have come to stay. She even said, take care of yourselves, she called. Godspeed and may you get home safely. Her lips were smiling. She brought the boy to the door to wave to us. Though we had known them so short a while, there was melancholy in the parting. There was something very sad in the parting, in the separation. Maybe we shall never see them again, I thought sadly. And I heard Nathan beside me heave a sigh. Both of us absorbed in our thoughts. Right, so they are very sensitive people. Right, so they were sighing and then leaving, not really attentive to the way they were leading to. We did not understand the shouting. We vaguely heard until one of the peons came running after us, puffing and angry. Are you deaf? He bawled. He shouted. I have told you 3 times that servants are not allowed to use this gate. Yet you continue as if you had not heard. They were deep in thought, and they didn't understand, or they didn't realize that somebody was shouting at them. We are not servants. That is their dignity, even though they are poor. You know, they are still dignified. We are not servants. Servants or not, it is all one. You must use the back gate. Come on, if you are seen here, I will lose my job. Right? They are supposed to use a back gate, not the front gate. So we find social discrimination. How the poor are treated. And they are not even allowed to use the same entrance as the owners of the house. We followed him. Some distance from the main gate was a smaller one, and to this he pointed there. And remember to use it next time as well. There will not be a next time, said Nathan gently, but we shall remember. Right. And in this chapter, we found the climax of their search. That is their search for Murugan. It ends there at the collector's house. So this is once again a turning point. And there is a twist in the story because now Murugan is gone and they are stranded in the city and they don't know what to do and how to earn money, how to survive, right? And their future is very vague now. Okay, right. So shall we stop at this place? We'll continue again.